Hello, viewers. Welcome to Vakwetu TV. This Monday segment on Vakwetu TV is called Percy's One-on-One with Dr. Kasonso. We will be talking about current issues in business, finance, with a focus on Zambia. I'm Percy Chama. At the close of the year, the dollar to kwacha buying at 16 kwacha to 16 kwacha 64 ngwe, selling at 16 kwacha 70 ngwe. The GB was buying at 22 kwacha 43 ngwe and selling at 22 kwacha 51 ngwe. The euro was buying at 18 kwacha 85 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 91 ngwe. The kwacha continues to stabilize, and well, that's it's doing well in terms of when you compare it to the other currencies. We are actually improving. In this second discussion, we are going to talk about the financial position of Zambia at the end of the year 2021, sorry, I'm still quite behind, I think. 2021 and the beginning of 2022. We focus our discussion on a few financial stats, economic indicators. We discuss fundamentals of economy, including physical space, inflation, and projections, government fundraising capacity, private sector government debt, and external support, current account, and use of reserves. So, as you've heard me talk about, describe about what we are discussing today, Dr. Kasonso, how are you before I even start asking you, how have you been? How was your week, and how was your weekend, and how is the new year doing to you?
Percy, very well, and the new year is looking kind. I was just shocked this morning to find the parking lot, including our cars, covered all white in snow. And of course, you know, the inclement weather reduces a little bit of our activities in the morning, but the year has started very well. Everything looks calm, and we are focused on the good that is coming ahead of us. Yeah, that's what is going on here.
That's great. That's great. Anyway, let me just ask you straightforward. How would you characterize the fundamentals of the economy, physical space, inflation, and the projection at the end of the year 2021?
Thank you so much, Percy. The fundamentals of the economy are really elements or indicators that go into understanding where the economy is, if it's growing or if it's not growing. And usually we focus that kind of analytics on the size of the economy as a key factor, the size of the economy. 2021, in the Zambia, we had a shrinked economy. Of course, due to many factors prior to that, but we saw the economy that was shrinking in size. It means that economic activity was much depressed. Of course, most experts would say due to the COVID, and also they would add on the diminished capacity of the economy to be able to thrive due to the structure of the economy. For example, you've heard many commentators complain about the size of the external debt, particularly the amounts that we pay that go out of the country that is not available to reinvest and also develop different sectors of the economy. So the fundamentals of the economy were weak in 2021 for the most part of the year until we begin to see some signs of life towards particularly in the last quarter. Or towards, past the election period, we began to see some great indicators. Yeah. So, but in terms of fiscal space has been a big issue. We have seen a decline of the fiscal space in the final quarter, to about 10.6% of the GDP, which means that government has fiscal space. Simply means government has a lot of things to do, but it doesn't have the money to pay for them. So we began to see government begin to have momentum and create some capacity to begin to pay for both the programs and the budgeted things that have been laid out for the financial plans. So in terms of fiscal space, we have seen some growth in there. So we're seeing the government beginning to gather capacity and potential and momentum to pay for some things. And then in terms of the rate of inflation, we saw that the rate of inflation was very high from the beginning of the year. And throughout 2021, the rate of inflation, which is the rate at which prices for essential commodities and stuff we buy in the economy, the rate at which the prices are rising. So we saw very high prices for commodities throughout the year. Inflation averaged about 22.6%. And but at the end, as we come towards the end of the year, we see that even the Bank of Zambia projected that in the 2022 period, we are going to begin to see prices come down. The inflation rate is projected to be at 15% during the year 22, and then drop to 9.3 of GDP by 2023. So we're seeing an economy that is building a momentum based on the fundamentals in the future that we have. So we expect the fundamentals to improve, which means the economy to expand. And based on the plans we've been that have been given or assigned by government, we expect the fundamentals to improve. We expect government to have fiscal space. We also expect inflation to go down. So although the prices are high at the beginning of the year, as we enter into the year and we interface with business, we are going to see prices starting to come down. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, before I ask you the next thing, people have makuchivolya na kukabwata. Sometimes kulabako mufika tupita. So muchiteko for summarize in just 1 minute. What do you mean by fiscal space ine chachila nimi efotiri wa group F
fiscal space nefi obuteko nabukwate fya kuchitefingi elo bufire bwakwata olupia lwa kususpend palifiria finto fere fo kuchita so ngachako bati obuteko akapia bule kwata bunono elo nefi akuchita nafifulisha the gap between those needs and the ability of the government to pay for the things that they need, if it's very small, restricted, then we'll say the fiscal space is narrow. Okay? But when we say the fiscal space will improve, it means that government will have a lot more money to meet the things that it needs to pay for. And then when we talk about... Yes.
So according to you, so now I'm just following up. Now I'm just asking you now a question now. How would you assess government fundraising capacity, considering what just explained just now? So can you expand on how government would the capacity for the government to fundraise the money?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So basically, government fundraising can be assessed by many factors, but let's discuss three of them. The first one we need to assess is expanding of revenue streams, government expanding revenue streams. So and the other investments that government makes, which gives it money, or cost-saving measures that it creates within its financial system. Then two, government issued securities. Government issued securities are treasury bills na government bonds. Because even print economy. So financial circulation has to be a certain level before injections of printed money can be put in. So these treasury bills basically, niwa government wale mirembere nkalata muchintu wengi kwa wati. Tuperen kwendalama, tukongweshen kwendalama, nga wabiki ndalama ma securities aya, o wabika ma treasury bills o ma government bonds. Ukesa kwata ishindalama pa end of the year. So government gets money from the circulation. And by doing that, the government is increasing its finances to pay for the things that it needs to pay in the economy. So nga ma treasury bills, nama government bonds, tayari subscribed to wino. Like for example, at the beginning of the year, ama issues na our government. Ma treasury bills, nama bond auctions were undersubscribed with bid amounts falling short of the amounts on offer by something like 20% and others by 70%. So towards the end of the PF government, and abantu tabari trust to take oku weekend ma treasury bills nama government bonds. So ngabantu ngawale weekend alama shabo mulia, which gives them a profit. It allows government to fundraise, use that money, and spend it in the economy on the programs and things that need to be satisfied. So, ngatabakwete, towards the end, because even this pot, it was empty. After the elections, we have seen a high spike, a very high spike in terms of the government securities and treasury bills. According to the Bank of Zambia, demand for government securities, particularly bonds, remained strong. Subscription rates for bonds and treasury bills rose to 278.3% and 138.0%. From 163% and 100% in the previous quarter, respectively. So, because now people have confidence and the trust in the government, they have come out and subscribed, people with money, they have come out and subscribed a lot to these government securities. So government has some cash at its disposal. The collections have been improved and have also put in the money in the treasury. And also, we see that so ubuteko wa control ko akapia apapa season hapa munshire yakobati yapela kwa bana yatupela kufeva lo chapa number hope kwa bati ngabatwalira paparate balira ifindu fyalaba bwino pantanji. So government capacity to raise money are two things. I summarize again: government bonds and treasury bills, receipts, and also nama subsidies. Subsidies. So government would have some money from that.
Okay. So what the other thing I want you to compare is, if you compare the start of 2021. The finances to the governing the prospects. If you compare the prospects at the beginning of the year to the end of 2021, at the beginning of the year 2021 to the end of the year 2021, what can you tell me about that in terms of?
Yeah, thank you. But that's what I was trying to do when I was using use the names of the government, the PF and the UPND. At the beginning of the year, the game we have a PF. Both treasury bills and government bond auctions were undersubscribed, with bid amounts falling short of the amounts on offer. So, abantu tabale vulendala mashabo okuya mukubika muri ba PF mubuteko during the PF. That was the beginning of the year. The MPC shows that from the Bank of Zambia. When we come to the end of the year, numbers ama subscriptions kuri shirendalama rise astronomically 200%, fimbi 100%. So there's a lot of confidence and faith in the way the government has set up. So people with money have invested in government securities, and then that makes government have money. So if you compare from the beginning of the year, the coffers were dry. At the end of the year, we can see life of money going in there. That's how we would compare it. So the only major thing that happened in between from the beginning to the end, my elections. So you can attribute this to business confidence in the economy, being the reason why they're able to move the money around and put in money in the economy.
Actually, since you've mentioned the economy, so what was the impact of private sector credit on the economy in 2021 then?
Private sector credit, private sector credit.
At least was a number to allow for.
Private sector credit ni mabanki ukukongweshenda mama companies at affordable interests. Private sector credit ensures that credit actually in the economy, the flow of credit in the economy, because credit supports capital for both working capital and also sometimes just original financing capital. So nga ama banks yale kongwesha ama companies in Dalama. There is a lot of movement in terms of economic activity. So what you see, private credit, beginning the Bank of Zambia reported that credit to the private sector moderated to 8.5% in December year-on-year from 13.8%. So there were problems because the lending to private sector had fallen. So if the lending to private sector falls, then the operational needs, financial operating needs are going to go unattended. And then the expansion programs also are going to suffer. So there will be, that will affect the employment levels because the private sector brings in activities that lead to economic, employment levels rising. So when we come to the end of the year, we are looking at what is going on with the new government in place, where private sector numbers. The Bank of Zambia said the overnight interbank rate declined to 8.10% in September from 8.3% in June. So what they're showing there is that the interest rates are coming down from the banks. the interest rates are coming down because if the interest rates are lower, then it stimulates private credit as well, because the people in companies and firms and other investment portfolios are able to take advantage of using other people's money to reinvest into their activities. So the impact at the end of the year was negative, and we begin to see it rise towards the end of the year. And we expect, if this trend continues, there will be an interplay in the banking system where, because of lower interest rates, companies will be able to borrow the money to reinvest in their operations and in their investment portfolios.
Okay, so because I think you did mention something to do with debt, is it? So because since you mentioned about debt, I'll now ask you just how can you assess the impact of government debt and external support in 2021 then?
That's very important, because it's connected to what we were talking about. Why credit for the private sector was poor is because of the credit position of the government. The Zambian government owes a lot of money. And you saw that we became the first country during COVID to default on the sovereign guaranteed bonds. It means government failed to pay. So if government is failing to pay, that affects also other companies. The banks and companies, they're also beginning to fail to pay. So the hopes were to be able to achieve what is called debt sustainability, where the government can go back and start paying on the loans. The previous government at the beginning of the year wanted to refinance. They failed to do that. So they wanted a guarantor for their debts, which is IMF, to be able to make some monies available to them and follow some program, strict program that will lead to long-term debt sustainability. So those are the things they failed. All they did was just to borrow, and then they failed to pay. The country defaulted. So because the country defaulted, the investors are not coming to the country. You are going to pay more for your exports, for your imports. You are also going to have a situation where the economy comes to a standstill, and you begin to face difficulties in expanding the economy, and difficulties in expanding employment opportunities, difficulties in doing business with the global economy, because your credit card is terrible. So we have seen this new government begin to take steps in the positive direction. For example, whereas their friends spent 7 years trying to get an IMF program, they spent 2 months and secured that program. So the plans that they have, they have shown that the plans that they have do make economic sense and can lead to the expansion they are seeking, and therefore the ability of the government to pay off its debts in the long term. Two, when you talk about public debt, the government debt, if the government is not paying its debts, there is a cascading effect in the economy on the private sector. So the private sector will also not be able to recover monies. So literally, the path we were going into the path of becoming a junk economy. Part of the reason for that was because the loans that the government got, the private government got, were very bad loans. They were very bad loans in the sense that, number one, they never brought that money to the country. They only brought structures, and those structures were not generating money. But you had to draw from the treasury to pay for those structures. So that was not sustainable. Yeah, so what happens now is that the government begins to work a platform to renegotiate those debts. There's a lot of anticipation that they are going to be successful because the IMF has already offered a preliminary guarantor status that was needed by the private lenders, the institutions that the country or the government borrowed from.
So, so as you put it, as you are saying, so can we also discuss the current account and the use of the reserves?
The current account is the bank account from which the country conducts business with the global economy. For example, your imports are going to be paid from that account, and the exports are going to come to that account. And this is the one minus we see in the financial position of the country. There was a spike in imports, and the exports stagnated. So the current account declined. The current account balance declined sharply. The Bank of Zambia said here that this is mainly to strong. They said, let me just spot it here again. Yeah. So the Bank of Zambia here said that because the exports did not bring in enough revenue, the country lost money in the current account. Yeah. So what the PF used to use, because the PF usually ran a depleted current account, they started using the reserves. The Bank of Zambia uses the phrase global, so international, they call it international reserves. So when you look at that, that is money you use in the reserves. That is money you use in periods when there's a crisis. So when the COVID hit, because they were using reserves, when the COVID hit, there was a loss of no, just the country could just function. The money, the financial situation was everywhere. So you can see that the current account has not improved. Of all the things that we have addressed and talked about tonight, the account through which we do global business is the one that has shown no improvement, but continue to decline. And that is primarily because of our dependence on imports, low exports and higher imports.
At least today I felt like I was in the classroom. That's it's very interesting. This is one-on-one. Percy's one-on-one with Dr. Kasonso. My mom had a go at me that I'm pronouncing your name wrong.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So at least I know it wasn't her fault.
Anyway, that's my expert, my financial expert based in the US. I'll bring in another financial expert, Patrick Chilufia, so that he can also add the voice to a few things he's heard. And if he's got a question for his fellow expert, and let me hear what he's going to tell us. Hello, Shanwa Patrick. I'm mute. You're still on mute. Yeah, you're on.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, Percy. Good evening, Dr. Kasonso.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, viewers. Yeah. I've been following your discussion with Percy, and very interesting and very positive, very optimistic, and it looks like the figures are looking very good. The kwacha is improving, and we've seen the government is now spending. Yes, was it today? They just announced they're dispatching 1.2 billion to go to the farmers and to the schools, which is very good, because the government now, unlike the PF, the government now is pumping money into the economy. So there's there's going to be liquidity into the economy now. And as Kasonso, you said, inflation has reduced, which means fundamentals are improving. And you spoke about the fiscal space. Obviously, we can see now the government is now it's got cash. Obviously, the subsidies are no longer there, so the government is taking some of that cash now, pump into the economy. Kasonso, you mentioned lower interest rates. Inflation is projected to reduce. Actually, it has reduced. I think it was 22% 2 quarters ago, and then the last quarter it was 16%, and it's projected to improve to reduce to 15 and 9% next year, which is very good. We can see that fundamentals are in place. But Kasonso, I'm gonna pose a question to you. These fundamentals are looking very good.
Yeah.
We had a situation in Mwanawasa government where Zambia became a middle-income country. The figures were looking wonderful, no debt, no nothing. But Mwanawasa was still lamenting that despite all those figures, fundamentals, everything, reduced corruption, the economic impact, the effect of those improved physical space, fundamentals, improved fundamentals, that was not translating into food on the table, for the poorest.
Yeah.
So my question, Kasonso, is how can the government translate improved financial statistics, which we are seeing, and economic indicators into into improved household conditions of living?
That is a catch thing, because Bachelor, like you have recognized, we have been here before where the numbers are looking good, but the situation in the home isn't looking that great. It's not showing any systematic improvements. The job of the government is in part to keep the interest of the country and also to improve the welfare of citizens. Actually, that is the quest for economic development. A quest for economic development is not economic numbers, improved economic numbers. Yes, there are fundamentals that must be kept and must be resurrected if they are lower. But the whole purpose is to improve the conditions. So the government's responsibility this year will be, whichever numbers are going well from the financial ratio point of view, those be translated into the improvements in the conditions at home. And there are several things that the government can do or has already planned to do. Some of them is to go into the family's expenses, regular expenses. Government can go into households and directly create policies that affect the pocketbook, translating that. For example, if you look into the household income, what is the biggest expense in our economy? If the biggest expense is rent, for instance, government needs to be able to do something directly that relates to either reducing rent or putting uniform policies concerning rent, or even better still, putting in programs that helps people to pay down their rent. because that way we are taking money directly from the numbers into the households. So it's to look at what does the family spend money on, and how much is the average family supposed to spend in Zambia. So from that pocket, government needs to have interventions that directly affect that. For example, we've also heard the good thing that the government has removed school fees for school-going children. So it means that they are allowing that money to be available in the family. That is an intervention. So what the Monawasa people needed to do is now what we are asking this government to do and expecting from this government is to do things that directly put a dent or cushion the people, give them capacity to meet those daily expenses or daily expenses. Now, we know that what the government has done in the short term is to actually increase some of that because of the fuel and energy subsidy removals. But we have to look at other interventions since government doesn't want to use those. Those have not been effective. And instead, they have led to a situation where they create more debt for the country. Also, injecting money in communities like they have done with doing with the CDF, there should be concerted effort to educate the masses in the Republic of Zambia that is an investment from their government into the welfare of the people, and that is to generate economic activity. People who have a skill, a craft, a small business, and things like that. So the other thing that needs to be done is promoting small to medium scale enterprises to build products in Zambia that can help reduce the imports that we get into the country, because we have seen from the stats that the current account is not doing very well. But the way to change that in the long term is to ensure that certain products are actually made locally in Zambia. That does not only boost economic activity and create jobs, but it also reduces the amount that we are spending on imports. We have to reach a point as a country where we can build products that can be found on the shelf in ShopRite. Because when we buy from those stores, we are funding the value chains outside of the country, and that is why the current account is in the toilet. So we have to have those type of interventions in small, medium-sized enterprises to build products of a quality comparable to those found there. I've heard many commentators want to increase exports, but where are you going to build substandard products and sell them in foreign markets if you can't even raise the quality or the standard of quality of your own product to compete in your own local market? So there should be an intervention to small, medium-scale industries that can do that. And those type of industries, we have here in the United States a store called Walmart. For every brand product, there is a Walmart-based product that does the same things but is sold at a lesser price. So raise products locally, build products locally, whether they are farming implements or whatever you can do, raise them to a standard, and then make sure they can compete on price, lower that, so then we reduce on the amount of money that being forked out of the country. That is the way we are going to have the numbers translate into household income being increased. That will create a job. So what we're trying to say in short here, Rachel, the way to answer your question, the way to translate the way to create a link between good economic numbers and the household family situation is through direct interventions to those, And for example, also we have companies that import, for example, fish. Fish comes from everywhere. An intervention that can be put there is a temporary moratorium on the importation of fish, whilst you have investments in the fish industry, on the other hand. So you do multiple things so that the fish we eat in our country, yes, other fishes taste different and better. We can import a few because we're an open country. But the more fish we grow in our country and produce, that takes up the economic spot on the shelf of the multinational stores also goes to retain money in the economy. I am weary also, Chilufya, for one thing. Government is releasing these monies and stuff, but because of our export-import structure, how much of that money is just going to end up in the sub-region and in other economies around us? Because everything is imported in Zambia. So, and for how long is government going to be releasing money and that money is bleeding to go out of the country? So, the way to translate the good numbers into good economic numbers is to arrest the amount of money that the country is losing through unnecessary imports of things that we can make ourselves and funding value chains in other countries, creating jobs in other countries. Whilst ours, we just sing about them, job creation, job creation, job creation, job creation. That's what I think we should do. What do you think about that?
But Percy, can I come in again? So, Kasonso, from what I'm hearing from you is that what the government needs to do to reduce money going out of the country, leakages, and also to create jobs, to improve household conditions, is to create create an environment conducive to support small-scale businesses, entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Because Kasonso, if you look at America, UK, most of the people are employed by small businesses that employs between 50 and 250 people.
Yes.
Those are the biggest employers. So, which means the government needs to concentrate on those people. Now, my question, Kasonso, is on one of the questions Percy asked you was about banks lending to businesses.
Yes.
But you know that it's very difficult for a small businessman, a small business, a startup to get money from the bank.
Yes.
Banks can lend but they cannot lend to small businesses. That's why here in the UK, I think even in America, where interest rates are very low, but the government still intervenes. They still, in some cases, the government can even give surety to those small businesses to go and lend money, to go and borrow money from the banks, because they want to grow that sector, because they know that sector is very important. Yeah.
Before you add another point,
before you answer,
let me just ask the question, Kasonso. So, Kasonso, if small, medium, and what do they call SMS? If they are the key, if they are the key to what you're talking about, start producing goods within Zambia, then what should the government do? Does the government needs to start passing certain laws to support that sector of the economy? And mind you, the government has already told us that we're going to look into that, because there is a ministry for the first time specifically for the small scale, small, medium, and
Patrick,
enterprises.
Summarize your question.
So Kasonso, what does the government needs to do? Because that sector is where the solution is.
Yes. In my mother's village, they taught us a proverb that ichikwanka bachimwena kumamparanya, something that guarantees your safety. You can see what it has done to other people. Here in the United States, we have a small and medium enterprise administration, SBA. Part of what SBA does is to guarantee loans for the small businesses that cannot secure funds through a credit facility with a bank. That is going to be needed. Government needs to borrow money to invest in small scale businesses. And that money doesn't have to be borrowed from the government directly. It can be through the banks that access that money, because the banks are the ones that can track the revenues and make the payments and stuff like that at the end of the year. That money is going. So what is going to happen is that government is going to source a huge sums of money for small, medium-sized enterprises that are viable. And through the banks, loan some of that money to productive ideas. So now, if you create a small-scale set of industries, it means that government has also to protect and nurture them, allow them to be nurtured, starting with those that are already pre-existing before you expand into those that are new ones, because there is a high failure rate for most startup businesses. So the borrowing for overinflated roads, for hospitals without medicines, the era of that must close off, and government must borrow for production. So that is the way I see it, Mr. Chilo. You already fumbled up, you already transcended upon the answer to that. Government needs to find money to invest in production, and production is small and medium-sized enterprises. If you have those type of industries, you have people working for them, you actually create more jobs. The majority of the people in any economy are employed in small companies, not in large corporations. So that we know.
Kasonso. Okay, let's move on to the next bit of the program, because when you two start talking, because you're all the same WhatsApp group, you'll be talking vice versa. So I might as well tell you, chill a bit. Okay, our next part is we'll bring in whoever is in the background, but the main thing is we'll go through some of the questions from our viewers. So I'll start with the one I've just put on the screen now. Yeah, it says, Dr. Kasonso, you can read that, Dr. Kasonso, and then you can give us an answer while I bring in one of our Bakwetu crew who's in the background.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sichilima. He is basically saying the other effect that government debt has had on the economy is crowding out effect. Kindly speak a bit about this and its effect on the private sector. So what Mr. Sichilima wants us to speak about a little bit is simply that if government is over borrowing,
but Doc, in my 1 minute.
Okay, good. If the government is over borrowing, then the private sector don't have opportunities or places where to go and borrow. Your government borrows the money and it doesn't pay back. Then where are the lenders going to get the money? To lend other people within the economy. So we need a government that can borrow, but within limits of leaving space to the private sector to borrow. Thank you.
How is my sister for Group F? Nach Diva.
Nach Diva Group Z. Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead, ask a question.
Yes,
evening,
I only have.
Gladys.
Good evening, ba Chiluke. Good evening, ba Dr. Kasonso. Ba Percy, you're all looking good.
Good evening, Mr. Tom. It's very good to see you.
Good to see you too. And we actually have a group, group A, but anyway, I just have one question. It's also because the government has been emphasizing on SMEs, which is a small medium business enterprise, and they have also created this segment. And as we are aware, some of us are aware that the European Union, they do support a lot of SMEs. And I just wanted to know, maybe Kasonso, you probably aware, or you can give us some information about the European Union supporting a lot of SMEs worldwide. And is Zambia one of the least who is supported by the European Union, and how can they get this support? And can they directly get in touch with, which channel can they go through to get support to the SMEs? I mean, to get support from the European unions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gladys, for that question. At the moment, we don't have funding from the European groups, but I'm sure people at the Ministry of Finance could hear that, and that's an opportunity. Because the starting point is to start with the ambassadors, the high commissioners from those countries, create a conversation around SMEs. And recently, Zambia qualified to the, through the MCC funding that's available in the United States, to borrow between Zambia and another country, maybe to borrow up to $500 million. So maybe the SME industry could be funded or supported through that stream if that is a type of project that the Millennium Challenge Group works with. So, but thank you for that idea, Sister Gladys, because we know that the European Union does support that. You can get loans or grants. So our country needs to streamline ideas and present a workable platform on which they can receive funding from that institution.
Patrick, do you have, you've got a minute if you've got anything to say on that?
The point that Gladys brought. Yeah, I've heard about the European Union supporting small, medium enterprises in other countries, and not only that, they support many other projects. You remember the money for the money that was mismanaged, the money that goes to the old people. What do they call it?
Social cash transfer.
Social cash transfer is funded by one of the Scandinavian countries. I think it's funded by the Scandinavians. So, where small scale industry, like I'll give an example. The other industry, the other ministry by Gladys, that can access a lot of funding, and Kasonso, you're going to support me, is the Green Ministry.
The climate change thing related.
That ministry can change things. Every country, the UK, America, everywhere, they've seen the effect of climate change, and whichever country promotes, especially African countries, try to promote greener way of living, they can be funded heavily. So Zambia that's an opportunity for Zambia. If we can have a lot of opportunities in initiatives in the green, environment, industry, innovation, we can be highly funded. Thank you.
Okay. Doc, you've got another question on the screen.
Yeah, basically what Charles Mambwe baliranda po fyakwe bati ngabampoke ndalama kuli ba IMF nabo kumpera ma conditions. Indalama fe shonse fyapusha pererwa, pusha fyalirwe ndalama. Shama conditions. Nakasala renga tawile bomba tawafole. Ero nga wakongola kapia ufiro wabwekesha munaka interest pamudu. So people, we have to. I know we were burnt by the IMF during the Chiluba government, but the kind of support they were seeking and the support that the current government is seeking are two different things. So what needs to happen here is that we can work cooperatively with the partners and meet the conditions that they want, because we are functioning as a country in a global economy. So we are interconnected to other economies. You can't get money from another country, use it or not use it in a way that generates money for that country to get back its money. So you have to improve your financial relationships with institutions across the border into the global economy. So that is what we are going to do. If you have financial prudence, you can access any money anywhere. The PF didn't fail because they couldn't meet the conditionalities of the IMF. The PF economic structure and strategy did not guarantee that they will be able to pay back the IMF when they borrow that money, because their mindset is if you are Kongo kufendalama na utamulipirero mwafiro kulipirero mwayafu kama mwalalo mba debt forgiveness. But yes, shekwe fe balungu kuma Chinese tafia bombe. The benana ma Chinese wanda fe takwa debt forgiveness in Kongo letaverera.
Actually, the Chinese have they now own the Ugandan International Airport in Tebe Airport. Actually, on the case in case of the, as you are saying, the debt, because the Ugandan government couldn't afford to pay for that. So the Chinese government, or whoever was contracted to build but was from China, got the airport. So basically, to be honest with you, that's what I thought. That was the route we were going, actually, to be realistic. ZESCO would have been ZESCO of China. Our airport would have been our airport of China. So I hope the IMF loan the government got, it has helped to cushion those debt our beloved brothers left us with. Anyway, actually, what I'll do now, I'll ask Gladys to find out if there's anything from people from YouTube, because there she's got a lot of friends. If there's a question from YouTube, whereby, because we've got at least 4 minutes, in that 4 minutes you can ask from YouTube. Or Patrick Nganam got a question here on Facebook. So I'm giving you both 2 minutes, I mean a minute each, and he's got 2 minutes to answer 2 questions from both of you, from Facebook and WhatsApp. I'll start with Gladys. Go ahead, Gladys, you can ask the question.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Gladys, yes. You can ask the question.
Yes. No, it's not a question, it's just a statement. Like I heard Kasonso said that
can you hear me?
Gladys, you can ask the question.
Yes.
Yes.
No, it's not a question, it's just a statement. Like I heard Kasonso said that can you hear me?
Gladys, you can ask the question.
Yes.
Yes.
No,
can you guys mute yourselves and see when you're talking? When you're talking, that's when you unmute yourself.
Okay, yes, now I can hear myself. I can't hear myself anymore. No, I was just making a statement. Just heard Kasonso say that the previous regime couldn't get the loan from IMF. I'm just wondering, like, you know, if you're looking at the political world plan, we are watching each other. And if we look at the previous regime, looking at how they were spending the money, I think any country or they'll be skeptical to give us the loan, to say that if they are really in need, why should we give them money? What is the guarantee that the money we give them are going to the intended purpose? So I believe that the previous regime couldn't manage to get the loan because of how they were misusing the money and showing it off, even documenting on public domain that we've got too much money. So even if you give us the money, we're going to squander it anyway.
Kasonso, as you've seen, we've run out of time. So I might as well just, I'm sorry, Patrick Insta, we are running out of time. So we'll just do a conclusion and a summary to what we discussed. And what I'll do is I'll start with you, Patrick, for just a minute. Then I'll hand it over to the doc to give it a full body of meat.
Thank you, Percy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Yeah. I'm not going to summarize. I'm just going to read quickly some of the, so that Kasonso can summarize with the number of Facebook viewers. who are excited about the EU funding of small. Can you hear me?
Yes. I can't hear you.
Yes.
Kasonso, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
It looks like there's a problem with internet. Percy is disappearing.
No, I can.
Can I go ahead?
Him. Yes, go ahead. I can see him myself. Yeah, go ahead, Bachelor.
But Gladys, can you hear me?
Well, Patrick, we can all hear you. It's his internet. Okay. What we do? Just
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so let's just do a quick roundup of the issues we addressed today. We spoke about the financial position at the end of the year and what the number looks like. In terms of economic indicators and the financial ratios that we worked through, from the fundamentals of the economy to fiscal space, rates of inflation, and then government's capacity to fundraise, the debt, and the use of reserves and a current account. So in our conclusion, we have seen that most of those financial indicators, with an exception of one, are trending in a very good direction for the economic recovery of the country. Now the challenge for the government is to translate those economic numbers into improved conditions of living. Muchibemba tulanda ati imiteekere ya kyalo okulingana n'efya kupendera mu endalama namba nashamba okumonekako bwino elo shesha trend mu right direction nombe ekinomba enchito ya buteeko kwikatanya abekala kyalo pamo nokubombera pamo n'abekala kyalo n'okubombesha sana n'okubika ama investments mu kyalo okweba ati fyama economic improvements tulemona fibe translated muma conditions, improved conditions of living for our people in the Republic of Zambia. The country is on the right path right now, but the country needs everybody to work hard, to put in the effort, and also to reduce the amount of goods that we are getting from other countries that we can make ourselves. Thank you.
And thank you, Doc. Actually, we've come to the end of our program. This is Chama Percy on Percy's one-on-one with Dr. Kasonso. And thanks to Patrick, Patrick Chirufia, who's one of the experts who's based here in the UK. And my sister, we come from the same WhatsApp group, Group F, but she's been moved to Group Z. So myself, I'm much better. I'm chilling in Group F. So have a good night, everyone, and enjoy your night. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.